They're not good enough to start. They're not even good enough to play. But they do talk a good game. So come join Lou and Jose from the sidelines where all the best sports discussions happen anyway. Welcome in to the Benchwarmerz podcast.
Welcome into the program, everyone. I'm Lou, that's Jose, and this is the Benchwarmerz podcast. Wherever, however, and whenever you happen to be listening, we appreciate you taking some time out of your day to spend it with us. We'll try to make it worth your while. Stick around, stay a while. We have a lot to talk about. Sports are back. Real sports are back. Baseball's back. I can't believe it. We've made it. We went 133 days without sports, and now we are back. Not necessarily better than ever, but back. Coming up in the second hour, we're going to be touching on. There's a lot of COVID talk, some NFL and the coronavirus, and what the ramifications could be coming up. A lot of basketball talk. Basketball is the next sport. It's almost here. Probably another few days. We're back in basketball. So the top of hour 2, we're going to be talking a lot of basketball. And after, in a bit, some our weekly football fix, because we just enjoy talking about football constantly. But first, the Marlins. Just let's start with some positive news that's actually really bad. Something positive about the Marlins is the coronavirus. And it turns out that 17 players on the Marlins have tested positive for the coronavirus. And it looks like there's some reports that apparently a bunch of players went out the night before the season opened in Atlanta, and suddenly there's this outbreak. So, Jose, just right off the bat, reaction to that alone. Let's start there.
Well, first of all, I didn't know that they went out to a restaurant in Atlanta. It makes so much more sense now that I've seen that you've told me that. This is devastating for Major League Baseball. You're not even a week into the season. The season's barely 4 days old, and already you have a whole week of games canceled because of coronavirus, and you already have a shortened schedule. So this is just terrible. The fact that it ran through the team, I think I hope that, once again, I'm hoping this is a wake-up call. This is not a game. Coronavirus is not playing around. He doesn't care if we have a season or not. People need to get in gear and get in line, or we're not going to have a sports. And honestly, when I saw that, I was like, well, they're just going to cancel the whole season now? Because, what happens when another team has an outbreak? This is terrible, terrible news.
Yeah, so I think, something that gets lost in this is that because the Marlins generally suck, it's not that big of a deal. I feel like if this was the Yankees or the Mets, even, the Mets aren't that good, but they're still in a pretty, they're in New York, so it's a big deal. If it was the Angels, if it was the Dodgers, if it was like a real contender, I think this story would just be, it would be spreading as fast as the coronavirus is. But
I still think it's a big deal because these teams have to play the Marlins. Now you can't have your season is going to end up being gridlocked because the Marlins have to quarantine for 14 days.
Well, yeah, I'm not saying that it's not. I agree with you. I think it's a gigantic deal, and I think that it should serve as kind of a cautionary tale to everyone else. And I think that there's some, not for the Marlins, but I think there's some luck. I think Major League Baseball kind of lucked out in a way because the team that it's affecting is a team that isn't really going to do much anyway. So it's, as far as ratings go, as far as, everything this could be much, much, much worse because, it's just not, it's scary because it could happen to any other team. So hopefully with a team like the Marlins, who was they were sort of out of it before they were even in it, maybe that's sort of the sacrificial lamb, so to speak. I hate to kind of put it that way, but it just, also, I don't feel that bad because if they did go out, it's kind of just, it's just stupid. I don't know what other word there is. You know that this is out there and you know that you're about to start your season. So why would you put yourself at further risk? There's already risk with people you have to come in contact with every day and the people they come in contact with and the people they come in contact with. But to voluntarily go out and try to, I don't get it. It's just
unnecessary. You're absolutely right. It's unnecessary. You're getting paid whatever. I don't know how many, whatever they're getting paid, but you're getting paid millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars, whatever the prorated salary is for the 60 days. Major League Baseball is kind of on life support right now as a sport, as a league for this season. They're trying to salvage anything they can out of this season. And you go and jeopardize it by going out to have some food. Why don't you just order some pizza and be like the rest of us? Like, it's just so annoying to me that they took this risk, if that is what happened. But if they took this risk, for what? So you could have a few drinks at the bar? And maybe it's just I don't go out that often, and that maybe I'm just an old man, I don't go out that often, I'm home. But it all just seems very unnecessary. You don't need to go to a bar for any reason or go to a restaurant for any reason. Just stay home, watch TV, get a video game, watch Netflix, and then play baseball. How hard is that?
Apparently, it's pretty hard. I don't know. I mean, it seems like it's more challenging than it should be, I suppose. And the thing about it is, now that some of these games have been postponed, I mean, Major League Baseball, the fun part of this abbreviated season is that the teams have to play, I think it's like 60 games in about 67 days, I believe is the number. So if you're postponing games, I'm curious how baseball is going to have these games be made up, or are they at all? Is it going to be maybe your winning percentage? I mean, that doesn't strike me as particularly fair if that's the case. So it's hard to imagine what's going to happen here if this is a prolonged. I mean, do you just start forfeiting games? That's not going to look good for the season. That's not going to look good for the league if you're just like, well, the Marlins are going to forfeit 4 games because they can't put enough players on the field. So,
well, they have a taxi squad, as they call, where they have extra players. Right. They're going to try and sign free agents. But you're absolutely right. And what I think would be a nightmare scenario, even more so than what we have right now, is if this happens to another team, where now all of a sudden you have to postpone games involving another team, and now your schedule, you were already working with such a thin margin of error. Now that margin of error is gone. You can't have any other outbreaks, and you're day 5 into a 67-day season. Good luck with that. Well, I think that's part of the reason why they went to 16 playoff teams, because maybe they're just like, we just need to give teams who are even in shouting distance a chance, because we know this season is not going to play out very fair.
Well, the thing is that comes to mind is, baseball is oftentimes not very exciting with their best stars on the field. So now if you imagine us, come playoff time, and it's, the starting, it's not Aaron Judge and Giancarlo Stanton. It's me and you are their 2 and 3 hitters up there. It's not gonna work very well, and it's not gonna play well on TV if it's just a bunch of no names on the field for these very marquee teams. And as far as the 16-game postseason, baseball did decide to do that. By the way, they did that about an hour before the opening pitch.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
They waited till literally about the last possible hour they could to decide whether they were going to expand the playoffs or not. So baseball will officially be 8. I think it's 8 teams from each league, or whatever you want to call it. And honestly, I mean, I think that's just a money grab by the owners. I think the owners are trying to make up for the revenue they're losing by only having a 60-game season. So, 16 teams in the playoffs means more playoff games. More playoff games mean more money in the pocket of the owners. So I think that was just sort of a money play more than it was anything else as far as the integrity of the league is concerned.
Yeah, there you are catching me being naive again. Yeah, you're probably right. I was thinking that they were trying to extend the integrity of competition and say, listen, it's going to be hard for you to settle what normally is a 162-game marathon in 60 games. So if you're within shouting distance, we're going to let you in the playoffs and then let you decide on the field. But I think you're actually right that it's probably more of a money grab than anything else.
Everything boils down to money, and all that money has to go to pay for contracts like the extension that Mookie Betts got, by the way, which is more news this week in baseball. Mookie Betts got 12 years, $365 million. I don't even know what to do with that. I mean, 12 years. First of all, 12 years. Jose, would you sign a player in baseball? Start with baseball, and then we can go to other sports. But in baseball, would you sign someone to a 10-plus year contract?
Probably not. I mean, I don't want to say no definitively, because there could be some really, really special player. But the problem is for me to sign a guy to a 10-year contract or 10 or 12-year contract, I need him to be an MVP all-star level player under the age of 25. And what makes that difficult in baseball is that a lot of players end up spending like 3 or 4 years in the minor leagues before they even make the majors. So by the time they take their first pitch or first swing, whatever, they're 23 years old and they're just breaking into the majors. So I've never thought it was a good idea. I mean, when I was younger and A-Rod signed that first 10-year contract, I was a bit just not really aware of everything. And I at that time, I thought it was a good contract because he was an amazing player. But now that I'm older and I see how I understand more how salary caps work and things like that, and how basically historically 10-year contracts have been a bust, a bust. I can't advocate giving someone a 10-year or 12-year contract. Certainly not Mookie Betts, who I believe is 28 years old. He just doesn't fit the mold for me.
Yeah, I mean, Mookie Betts he's 28. I mean, Mike Trout comes to mind. He's 28. So to fit your theory, I guess, if we go back three seasons, 3 years, he'd be 25.
Yeah,
and
then I'd be doing. Then I'll be okay because then he'd be 35 at least by the time the contract's done.
Right. But to be, I mean, Mookie Betts is going to be 40 when his contract is up. So I'm not. I mean, listen. Nutrition and training have advanced significantly. So 40 could be the new 30 for the most part. I mean, we see, obviously Tom Brady is the spokesperson for longevity and, not falling off the proverbial cliff as so many athletes are often want to do. But I'm not sure. 12 years is a long time for sure. And the question that I have for you beyond that is Mookie Betts was the face of the Red Sox for a season, right? Yes. Now, do you think that we're going to look back on this and see this as a win for the Red Sox, a win for Mookie Betts, a win for both, a loss for both? I mean, how does that, if you're the Red Sox right now, what are you thinking? Because the Red Sox tried to get Mookie Betts. I think they gave him sort of it's hard to call $300 million a lowball offer, but obviously he knew that he was going to be able to get more money elsewhere than the Red Sox were willing to pay. But I don't know.
The biggest winner in this is Mookie Betts. There's no way you get a 12-year, $365 million. He's got paid $187,000 per game, right? You don't. There's no way you lose that, right? He's a winner. Win. For the Dodgers, the only way this, to me, you look back at this contract and say, what a success, is if in 10 years you have 3 World Series and Mookie Betts has like 2 to 3 more MVP awards. Mm-hmm. That's the only way that this contract feels worth it to me. And if I'm the Red Sox, I'm happy I've dodged that bullet. I'm not. A few years ago, the Yankees were in the position to give Robinson Cano a big contract. He wanted a 10-year contract. They wanted to give him a 7-year contract. The Yankees let him walk. He signed with the Mariners. And I think the Yankees are ecstatic that they did not give Robinson Cano a 10-year contract because he's no longer on the Mariners. He's now a mediocre player on the Mets.
Yeah, which I didn't know. I didn't know that till about a week ago.
Yeah, there's almost just historically, you look at, especially in baseball, Mike Trout, we'll see what happens with Mike Trout. Bryce Harper already doesn't look like that great of a contract. It's only in year 2. Giancarlo Stanton doesn't look like a great contract. We'll see with Manny Machado. We already know Alex Rodriguez, his contracts were terrible. Albert Pujols, like Joey Votto. These contracts, they look good in the first 3 or 4 years, and then you get to like year 5, 6, 7, and you're like, what were we thinking? And that's exactly what what's going to happen. The Mookie Betts is going to be 35 years old. The Dodgers are going to be like, wow, we have 5 more years left on this contract, and we can't do anything because this contract is fully guaranteed. You can't just cut him like in the NFL. So I don't see any way the Dodgers win this.
I guess if it brings them a championship and Mookie Betts is a pivotal role player in that championship, I guess you could say, well, it was worthwhile because, that's the goal, right? Is to
for one championship though?
Well, it's one more than they've won in the last how many years? That's that's
since 1988, I believe.
Kershaw is waiting for that ring. David Price Cody Bellinger. I mean, they have a solid team and they've made it a few times, but they feel maybe I can only imagine that they decided that Mookie Betts was the player that was going to put them over the top, and it might be. I mean, the Dodgers I think are the favorites along with the Yankees to make the World Series. But I think it's curious to me that the Red Sox decided to get rid of him and not even pony up the extra $65 million or whatever he ended up getting or wanted. And I get that the Red Sox are kind of in this rebuild period, but it stands to reason that, I mean, in a rebuild, you have to start somewhere. And this kind of reminds me of what we're going to be talking about next. And it's sort of the Jets and Jamal Adams. It reminds, they're very similar in a way because Mookie Betts is a generational player. I mean, he's a great player. And he's also happens to be a really good dude off the field. So he's kind of that, to me, he's sort of that keystone that you build around. I don't know why you would just say, all right, well, let's get rid of him too, unless you feel like you're so far out from success that, by the time you actually get good, he's going to be too old to matter. So maybe that's it, but I don't really understand the Red Sox.
I don't think the Red Sox have ever given anyone a 10 or 12-year contract. I mean, they've had David Ortiz, they've had Manny Ramirez, they've had Dustin Pedroia. They've had great players over the last few years. I don't think they've ever done it. It might just be an organizational thing where they don't believe that a player, they don't want to give a player that long of a contract. They don't want to be locked into it for that long. And I don't blame them for that. I think a lot of teams wish they didn't give 10-year contracts in the 6th or 7th year of that contract.
Yeah. I mean, I guess, but it seems like they're becoming more and more prevalent, which is kind of interesting. So,
did you think the Alex Rodriguez deal was worth it? They did get one World Series out of it. The Yankees.
I mean,
and that's less money.
The thing with the Yankees is that they're just a money machine. So it's sort of, the Yankees kind of have their own sort of salary standards where, Steinbrenners are going to pay for whatever they need to pay for to win, whatever they think is going to get them to win. But the Red Sox aren't far behind. I mean, the Red Sox payroll is I think right there with the Yankees. I mean, it's not like the Yankees are making so much over and above what the Red Sox are making.
I just think that a lot of people would consider the A-Rod deal to be a bad deal, even with the one World Series. Well, and I think that's what players are judging. Teams are kind of judging that, like, I don't want to get stuck with another A-Rod contract.
Had he not popped for PEDs twice, maybe it would be looked at a little bit differently. Because I think sort of the success is marred a bit by his sort of, all the drama surrounding his PED testing. And I don't know. I mean, can you say I mean, the Yankees have won one World Series in the last 20 years. I mean, so
it's hard to say. Was on that team.
Yeah, it's hard to say that it wasn't worth it.
Interesting. Okay.
But in any event, all right. So that's baseball. Baseball's back. We're very excited. And Mookie Betts, I guess we'll see. We can revisit this in the future. But like I said, this reminds me a lot of Jamal Adams, and we're going to talk about that after we take a break. There's a whole litany of NFL things we need to talk about, including the artist formerly known as the Redskins. We'll get into that. some players coming back to camp, and some crazy predictions from one Kansas City Chief. So we'll touch on that and more when we come back on the Benchwarmers.
A social distancing tip.
While the CDC urges you to avoid close contact, like hugging or shaking hands, there are other non-physical ways to say hello. Wave, wink, use sign language, salute, smile, give the peace sign, throw up an air high five, do jazz hands. Remember, stay a minimum of 6 feet or 2 arms length away from others, and stay home if you can. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #AloneTogether. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome back to the Benchwarmers podcast, where being all talk is actually a good thing. Now, back to the action. Or talk, I guess.
Welcome back to the show, everyone. I'm Lou, that's Jose, and this is still the Benchwarmers podcast. We appreciate you spending some time out of your day with us to talk actual happening for real sports. How exciting is this? It's crazy. We actually have sports back. So we touched on a lot of baseball in the beginning of the show, Jose, I forgot all about this. I wanted to take a second. We have our first official super fan. A friend let me know that he enjoys our show, and he's gone back and listened to all the archive podcasts that we have. So our buddy Clayton is now our first official super fan. So Clayton, we appreciate your dedication to our budding and growing show. We hope that you stick around until we're hopefully a ravaging success. And
thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly. So if you also want to access those archive shows, you can follow us along we're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. The shows themselves are on YouTube. They're on Apple Podcasts, Google Play. We are part of the iHeartRadio podcasting lineup, Spotify, pretty much everywhere and anywhere you get podcasts, you're going to find us there, and you can access all of our prior shows just like Clayton did. So now that said, I want to move on to our favorite sport and favorite topic to talk about, the NFL. And so we're whether or not there's any news in football, we're going to have this weekly football fix just because I feel like I need to talk football with someone at some point during the week. So as I touched on before the break with the Mookie Betts contract that we ended with, Jamal Adams, kind of the Jets situation with Jamal Adams, first it reminded me of Mookie Betts and vice versa. They sort of mirrored each other in a way. Earlier in the week, Jamal Adams criticized Adam Gase, and I mean, he's not the only one. Jose, you are constantly criticizing Adam Gase. A lot of Jets fans are criticizing Adam Gase. I think Jay Ajayi and a few other former Dolphins players have also criticized Adam Gase. So apparently there's a good chance that Adam Gase might not be head coach material because he seems to not enjoy having talented people around him. I guess not surprisingly, the Jets were able to deal Jamal Adams after he was, complaining incessantly about the team and not wanting to be there. They gave him his wish. Then Jamal Adams was traded to the Seattle Seahawks for 2 first-round picks. Mm-hmm. Now, I have two opposing thoughts about this trade. The first thought that went through my mind is that the Jets got a great deal, which I don't say that very often. I think if you look at what Minkah Fitzpatrick was traded for, the Steelers only gave up 1 first-round pick for Minkah Fitzpatrick. And I don't think that Fitzpatrick is that much worse, if at all, than Jamal Adams.
I agree completely.
So the Jets getting 2 first-round picks, albeit from the Seahawks. The Seahawks obviously they're the perennial playoff team, so their first-round picks aren't going to be stellar, top 10 picks, barring injury. I mean, they're going to be kind of at the low end of the first round. So maybe that factored into it a bit. But the other thing that came to mind was that it's giving the Jets draft picks for Jamal Adams feels like, let's say you and I were going to do a deal together and you had, an incredibly valuable watch. And I was going to give you money for that watch, whatever you wanted. But the problem is you are not good with money. You're not actually not good with money. But in this scenario, you don't know how to spend your money wisely. So I'm going to give you money, and then you're going to give me the watch. I'm going to get something that is of value to me, and you're just going to foolishly waste the money. And I feel like that's sort of what's happening with the Jets. I feel like the Jets they have these 2 first-round picks now, but it's hard for me to believe that they're going to be able to. I know they're under new management, but it's just, historically speaking, the Jets are just so bad at draft picks. I don't think that they're going to. The best that they could hope for is that one of those draft picks turns out to be a player as good as Jamal Adams was.
Well, yeah, I was going to say that they did draft Jamal Adams, but you're right.
And now they're giving him away.
Yeah, giving him away, he doesn't want to be on the team,
Yeah.
And we were just, when this came out, you and I were talking about, I'm not sure with him, there was someone else who demanded a trade, I don't know who it was. And it's like, well, do you even want this player on your team? Right. And then you have to kind of question that, okay, well, if he doesn't want to be here, and I can get 2 first-round picks, if you don't think that you can make good picks with your 2 first-round picks, you got to get rid of your general manager right now. Right. So you have to believe in your ability to maximize the value. Now, I would agree with you that I wouldn't, if I had to bet, are they going to turn, and they also got a 3rd-round pick for next year as well. So they got 2 firsts and a 3rd. So if I would say they're going to get one Pro Bowler, All Pro from those 3 picks, probably not. But at the same time, they probably were going to get nothing from him for him anyway, because he was probably going to leave next year in free agency or the year after that, whatever.
I think that, and I agree with you. He was complaining. It's sort of the chicken or the egg, where he was complaining, so you kind of have to get rid of him to kind of get rid of that distraction in the locker room. But he was only complaining because the Jets didn't want to pay him.
And I wouldn't.
He was complaining because he felt like he was mistreated. And I know it was a little early for his contract or whatever, but it wasn't. I mean, for a player of his caliber, I mean, he's top 3 at his position in the league. And I know safeties aren't as valuable or looked at as being as valuable as some other positions, but he's still one of the best at his position. And for a guy like that to come along, don't you want to keep him on your team? Don't you want to make him happy? Don't you want him to help you win and give you some sort of backbone to that defense?
Well, here's the question about the Jets that they probably looked in they had a look in the mirror moment. Are the Jets 1 or 2 years away from winning a Super Bowl, or 3 years away? Can you see the Jets winning a Super Bowl in 3 years in any circumstance?
No, absolutely not.
Okay, so why would you give Jamal Adams whatever it is that he's got? So you could pay him. I'm just throwing out a number. You pay him $15 million a year for the next 5 years. For what? So you don't end up winning a championship? I think that they made a move. They're still in the rebuild, which is a knock against Adam Gase, and I can't, off the top of my head, I can't think of who their general manager is, but it's just a knock against their front office for making bad moves. But they overpaid Le'Veon Bell.
Joe Douglas is there.
Okay, yeah, they overpaid Le'Veon Bell. They were going to end up overpaying Jamal Adams. Jamal Adams, the Seahawks overpaid for him, as you kind of alluded to earlier. They basically went all in as if he was the missing piece from them going to the Super Bowl. I don't even think they were that much better. I don't think it moves the meter for them that much. And I was trying to figure out, how can I determine how important the safety position is? How can I determine, against other positions? And what I decided to do was look at kind of an imperfect system, but I looked at the Defensive Player of the Year awards because, quarterback is the most important position on the field. As a result, quarterback wins MVP all the time. So I felt, okay, well, Defensive Player of the Year is essentially the MVP on the defensive side. So, and the award's been given out every year since 1971. A safety has won the award 5 times in almost 50 years. It's not a highly important position. They, in the players that won recently, we talked about them before. Troy Polamalu, Ed Reed, and the other name is escaping me right now, but it was Rod Woodson is not a safety, but yeah, Troy Polamalu and Ed Reed were 2 of the players that won, and Jamal Adams is not on their level, not in my opinion. I think that the Jets made a great move. You get rid of the guy, you get 2 first-round picks, and you gamble on your ability to make a better pick. You're not in a position to win. Right now, you need to be getting more draft picks and continuing your rebuild. And you need to fire Adam Gase, plain and simple.
Yeah, I think Adam Gase has got to go for sure, and it's unfortunate. But and the Seahawks, I feel like, are just they're all in. I mean, they're Pete Carroll's been he won with defense and running game. And he has the running game for the most part. I think they were predominantly a run first team last year until they had that series of injuries in that position. But in their glory days back in 13, 14, they were run first, and then defense was a big part of that. So obviously they blew up that team, and the whole Legion of Boom is gone. But Bobby Wagner's still there, and I think Jamal Adams adds to that in a way that's, it's significant. I mein, they have the Griffin brothers are there as, linebackers and cornerback. And there's a few pieces, and I think that they need to add a little bit more. But it felt like Jamal Adams, to me, was a direct attempt at thwarting the 49ers. Because Jamal Adams is sort of a box safety. He's a strong dude. He's almost like, he reminds me a little of Roy Williams from the Cowboys some years ago. Like he's not the fastest guy, but he's strong. He's a great tackler. He's a leader. And I think that this move was a direct shot at, George Kittle, first of all, who is, just a matchup nightmare. So you need somebody or someone to kind of deal with that. And because the Seahawks, the 49ers, they have to beat the 49ers to win the division, or they have to just hope that they are this perennial wild card team, which nobody wants to be because then you're on the road more.
They have to hope that I hope that, I don't hope because I'm a 49ers fan, but the Seahawks have to hope that you're right, because I don't see it. Basically, they went all in on him. So that means they gave up 2 first-round picks, third-round pick. They're going to have to give him a big contract. They've already paid Russell Wilson. You and I have talked about this off the air and on air about just the importance of making good draft picks once you start paying guys. Once you start paying, the Chiefs paid Patrick Mahomes $50 million a year, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. They have to hit on their draft picks going forward. You just can't throw away first-round picks for 2 years unless you're getting a Super Bowl out of it. So, to me, it's Super Bowl or bust, and maybe that's the position they're in anyway. It was Super Bowl or bust. I don't think this gets them closer to the Super Bowl, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, they tried this in a way last season with Jadeveon Clowney, the Clowney signing, and he didn't exactly, Jadeveon Clowney's kind of been a bit of a disappointment in his career from where he came from in college, but it didn't quite work out the way that Pete Carroll wanted. So maybe Jamal Adams is sort of that, he's the next guy and he's the answer. So we'll see. But they're going to have a tough road to hoe, especially with teams like the Ravens and the Chiefs waiting in the wings on the other side of the conference. And speaking of the Chiefs, I don't know if you noticed this, Jose, but Tyreek Hill went out of his way to say that he made a statement that the Chiefs will win 7 Super Bowls. Now, to me, I'm not sure how you feel about this, but I thought that we learned our lesson when LeBron went to Miami and immediately put all of the pressure of the world on him, and it's by saying not 4, not 5, not 6, not 7, not 8, and then they struggled to win 1, and then won 2 out of 4 on that team. I think Tyreek Hill, what he should have said, instead of saying, we can win 7 Super Bowls, maybe 7 all time for the Chiefs, but Tyreek Hill certainly isn't going to be around for 7 Super Bowls. That's at minimum, that's 7 more seasons. I don't think Tyreek Hill is going to be on the Chiefs in 7 seasons, and that's assuming that they go on the greatest dynasty run of almost any sport ever.
Yeah.
Why not say, hey, we're going to go for 2, and then when we get 2, maybe we'll worry about 3.
Well, why not say we're going to be a Super Bowl contention for 10 years or 7 years or something like that? Don't just outright say we're going to win the Super Bowl. But it's a bold prediction that no one should take seriously.
It's not even a bold prediction. I think it's sort of it's all that does is give bulletin board material to every other team in the league who, by the way, if you're playing the Chiefs, you're bringing your A game to begin with. And now you have a little bit extra. You don't think Bill Belichick's going to have that stapled to the wall at the stadium, or it's going to be pinned to Cam Newton's helmet every day and just say Tyreek Hill said they're going to win 7 Super Bowls, so we're not going to win. That stuff, coaches and assistant coaches live for comments like that, and so it just seems like a very unnecessary thing. I want my players to be confident. I get that. I want you to be confident, but don't be stupid. Don't say things that are just outlandishly ridiculous. And don't put so much undue pressure on your team. Obviously the Chiefs are going to be good, but if they go to the Super Bowl and lose next year, we're going to think that they're a disappointment. And I don't know. It's so.
I agree with everything you said.
So short-sighted.
I agree with everything you said, but the last thing I'll say on it is, and I'm sure Tyreek knows this, the NFL, unlike any other sports league, you don't even know what's going to be happening in the league in 2 or 3 years. Right. Everything changes so quickly in the NFL. We think that the Chiefs are going to be this strong juggernaut for the next 5 to 7 years. It seems like that, but you just don't know how things play out. Guys get injured, guys get washed up. You miss on a few draft picks here and there, and next thing you know, Patrick Mahomes is throwing to nobody. Like, it's very tenuous in the NFL to even win back-to-back. So to win 7 out of 20 would be incredible.
Yep.
To win 7 out of 30 would be incredible. So to win 7 out of 7 or 7 out of 10, whatever you think's, it's unrealistic, and it's just a ridiculous, bold statement.
Yeah. I mean, the Patriots won 6 out of 20, and they're considered the greatest dynasty in football history. So it's just a little silly. But in any event, moving on, some more football news. All preseason games, we were kind of whittling down the preseason games. Football went from 4 preseason games, they went to 2 preseason games, and now there are 0 preseason games. Now, this kind of comes on the heels of obviously all the coronavirus talk and things like that. It just felt like, I guess, teams didn't feel like they were ready to do this. Later on in the second hour, I have a couple ideas on how the NFL could radically change and possibly deal with the coronavirus in a way that would, I mean, it would be incredibly beneficial for the NFL and us as fans. But we'll get to that later next hour. Preseason games, I mean, I feel like most veterans don't care about preseason. If you're on a team with, an established coach and you've been there for more than one season, you kind of, you're professional athletes. I think who this affects the most are rookies coming into the league, and guys like Joe Burrow come to mind immediately because, I mean, he's going into, even with all preseason games, he's still going into a dysfunctional franchise. So now you're taking away all of that practice time and thrusting him into, his first pass in the NFL might be his first pass in the NFL.
Yeah, I think it affects not only guys like Joe, but like, how about Tom Brady? Like, you have quarterbacks changing teams. This is the year of continuity for me. It earlier in the season, or earlier in our show, we were talking. I made a bold prediction of the Lions finishing ahead of the Packers, and after hearing this, I'm just like, I'm just going to have to rely on Aaron Rodgers. I think that the Packers are overrated. I don't think they were that good, but I can't pick the Lions. The Packers have been there. They were a 13-win team last year. I think all the teams that we saw do well last season are going to do well again this year. And so it really hurts the fringe players trying to make teams, and it hurts new players trying to get chemistry with other new players. And it's a smart move, but it does kind of suck. And it also leaves little margin for error. So what else, if anything happens, what games are going to be removed then? Because now the preseason is gone. So
I don't think it affects Tom Brady so much because, I mean, as we've seen, he's been holding sort of these, covert practices with teammates, and there's no defense that Tom Brady hasn't seen yet. Guys like I said, like Joe Burrow have never seen an NFL defense. I mean, you could argue that he had an NFL offense on LSU last year, but
it certainly affects Tom Brady less than it affects Joe Burrow. I just think there's a difference between holding practices at your house or at some nearby high school, and at least getting on the field and getting hit and tackled.
Absolutely. Speaking of getting tackled, the last item up we have is that Alex Smith, after being tackled and having his leg broken and then going through a litany, count them, 17 surgeries, is back and cleared for football activity. Now it says that he probably is going to start the season on the PUP list until he's cleared by team doctors, but he's going to be able to play football this season. And I'm not sure. Did you see the special? I think it was. I don't know if it was a legit 30 for 30, but it was an ESPN special on Alex Smith, and I watched it in its entirety. And let me tell you, if you haven't seen it, it is incredibly graphic, and it is disturbing because he got an infection after he broke his leg after his surgery, and it was like a flesh-eating bacteria, and they literally had to remove chunks of his leg in order to basically save his life because this virus, this bacteria was just eating him alive, and they almost had to amputate his leg. That's how bad it got. Yeah, it was crazy. And it's graphic. I mean, if you're eating and you're sensitive to things like that, don't watch that documentary. But it did shine some light on Alex Smith's character, and he's he's just a great dude all around. He's got a great family. It's inspiring to see him kind of battle through all this. And I'm curious to think where I was trying to think about this earlier. Where could Alex Smith go? Where presuming that he can get back to some level of what he was before. He wasn't the best quarterback in the league, but I think Alex Smith is sort of purported as the ultimate game manager. I think is what he gets the tag, which sounds like it's a negative, but it isn't necessarily. I mean, he's a smart guy. He was reasonably athletic. I'm not sure if he's going to be running much anymore. Accurate passer, and overall, just kind of a very stabilizing force to an offense. I'm not sure if the Redskins are, they have Dwayne Haskins, so I'm not sure if they're going to be looking at Alex Smith. I mean, maybe as a tutor, or maybe to start off as a backup. I mean, sort of what he did with Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City. I could see him maybe trying to help Dwayne Haskins along in that regard. But as a starter, I don't know where I see him, if at all.
Well, I don't know. As a starter, other than the Redskins, it's tough to pick a spot right now. If he gets healthy, I don't think it would be this year anyway. It would probably be next season. I look at the Bears, Chicago Bears, maybe as a team, because I feel like Alex Smith is the perfect bridge guy, right? So if
they have Alex Smith, his name is Nick Foles.
Yeah, Alex Smith is way better than Nick Foles. Nick Foles is so overrated, but I don't want to get into Nick Foles. Either way,
Nick Foles has a Super Bowl ring.
Okay, so yeah, I can ride coattails to a Super Bowl as well. I mean, I guess he was the MVP of the Super Bowl.
I mean, he was the MVP, Philly special. He was the
MVP of the Super Bowl, and then he couldn't beat out Gardner Minshew last year. Okay, and when he loses the job to Mitch Trubisky this year, you'll see that people have been trying to turn him into a full-time starter for a long time. He's just not that good.
Nick Foles will absolutely be the starter over Mitch Trubisky by week 3.
Maybe, but then by week 10 they'll give it back to Mitch Trubisky because they're basically the same quarterback. Neither of them are good. So, but I mean, as far as listen, I don't want to be disrespectful to Nick Foles. I'm sure he's a quality quarterback. I just think bringing Alex Smith as far as competition, right? Let the best man win. Nick Foles is not. This is not. You're not bringing in Tom Brady here, where there's no competition. Tom Brady's the starter. Nick Foles hasn't earned that right, not in my opinion. I feel like another team I was thinking about was the Rams. I mean, I know that they're pot committed to Jared Goff, but we've seen how important and valuable a quality backup is in the NFL. We've seen it over the last few years. Mm-hmm. Having a guy like Alex Smith to maybe put some pressure on Jared Goff or just be a good backup. Another team that I thought of, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I don't know how many years Ben Roethlisberger has left, but next season, why not bring Alex Smith over, have him be a backup, or have him compete to start? I mean, I guess you would almost automatically give the job to Ben Roethlisberger unless he retires. And then you also have the Patriots, who they have Cam Newton for 1 year. They have Jarrett Stidham, who's only thrown 4 career passes. Mm-hmm. Why not bring Alex Smith in to be a backup and compete for a starting position? I think there's a few teams where he'd have even you look at the Jets, and I have a feeling Sam Darnold may not be long for the NFL. I could be wrong, but whether that's by his own design or otherwise. I mean, I think that you might be right, but I mean, Alex Smith. The other team that came to mind actually was if he went back to the Kansas City Chiefs. Oh yeah.
As Patrick Mahomes' backup, I mean, as good as Matt Moore was for those 2 games that he played last year, I mean, Alex Smith would make me feel a lot more. I mean, they were a playoff team with Alex Smith as their starter, so he knows the system. He knows Andy Reid. I mean, he knows Patrick Mahomes. He knows the team. I guess maybe he'd have to kind of, his pride might take a little bit of a hit going back to the team that traded him, but I just think that's get a ring at it.
Yeah, and I think as we've seen in the last few years with the Eagles and then last year with the Saints, if you can get a quality backup, a guy who can come in for 3, 4, 5 games and not wet the bed, maybe give you a chance to have a winning record, it's so valuable. It's so important, and I don't think there's anything. I don't think that's a slight against Alex Smith. It's hard to just plug him in as a starter right now. You haven't played football in 2 years.
And don't forget, I mean, this season especially, because who knows who's going to be out with, COVID. And, it could hit anybody at any time. It's not just like an injury risk. There's this whole other dynamic where, the NFL is probably going to have to have expanded rosters just like baseball is. And, a quality backup or maybe even a third string quarterback might, they might get some playing time based on what happens during the season.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So that'll do it for hour number one. We gotta up against the hard break here. So we're going to take a break. We're going to come back in hour two. We have some more NFL news a little bit later. And I have a crazy radical theory that I touched on, I think, last week, and I kind of want to expand on it a little bit. And we have some ideas about what the NFL can do to battle the coronavirus. But coming up next, it's our basketball preview. NBA is coming back. It's exciting, and we can actually talk about real things that are going to happen in the very near future. So we'll have that and more when we come back on the Benchwarmers podcast. Stick around.
Thanks for listening to the Benchwarmers podcast. Follow along with us on the Benchwarmers podcast on Facebook and Instagram. And don't forget to review us on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.